It is the season of overreaction as we tip off this NBA season. The Boston Celtics get a big win in their opening game. Big story there. Tingus Pingus putting up over 30 points, playing against the team that drafted him, the New York Knicks. So, it was a big revenge game style day for KP. What'd you think of seeing KP go out there and shine?
Well, there's very little debate in the NBA that he's the best number 4 in the league, right? If Kristaps Porzingis is your number 4, that means your team is pretty damn good. And granted, there's only one ball. There is but so many touches for the Celtics, but Kristaps Porzingis being able to do that every night is something that they weren't getting from their number 4 last year, which I guess their number 4 was Al Horford, but the Boston Celtics are really deep and really good. And I didn't think that the Porzingis move would have as much of a profound impact as others did. Obviously, with the tiniest of sample sizes in one game, that would not be the case. Moving Marcus Smart for Kristaps Porzingis in a vacuum is a good trade. And then when you think about it for that team specifically, it seems like less of a win. But at the same time, I mean, the Boston Celtics look impeccable on offense. They were the number 1 offense last year, and it seems like they're only poised to get better this year.
Yeah, and some other things that kind of happen in this game. You talked about KP being called the number 4. I've heard, as you mentioned, other people call him the number 4. Howard called him the number 4 today. But some people in Boston media are even being so bold as to say he's the number 2 on this team. And again, when I talk about the overreaction element of this is with JB having a bad game. Jaylen Brown struggled in the opener. It was 11 points on 11 shots. So not Jaylen Brown's best day at the office. He's obviously got paid to the largest contract in NBA history or highest paid player in the NBA. Whatever you want to mark it as. He got broken off, and to have this type of performance in the debut, obviously disappointing for him. Kristaps filled that vacuum, but man, what I gotta say though, watching him, I wasn't as down on him as other Celtics fans were when this trade was made. There's a lot of people hesitant to really buy in, and it hurts when you lose Marcus Smart. If the Celtics were to win a championship, if they were to hang banner 18, I wanted them to do it with Marcus Smart because he's a guy that's been there from the start. He was one of those ride or die type guys that you love to have on your team, those energy guys. It'd be like, was our Draymond Green, obviously less success in that time, but he was our Draymond. And, we never got a chance to do it. And now insert KP. And at many times when I think about KP's career, right? So he comes into the league. No one loves him. I joke around with the Tingus Pingus nickname that was given to him by Knicks fans very early on. But then he shines in New York. He puts up decent numbers, not superstar numbers, but decent numbers. And he becomes that unicorn. Everyone's praising him. Everyone's loving him. And then he just has that falling out with the Knicks, ends up in Dallas. And he wasn't terrible for Dallas either, but he wasn't maybe a good fit with him and Luka. Then you look at what happens when he gets to Washington, and he had a productive year for Washington last year. It wasn't a bad year. So when he goes to the Celtics, if he was going in as the number 4, whatever he ends up becoming this season, the pressure wasn't really on him. But, pressure moment in the opening game against, the team that drafted you, he was nailing those threes. He was money from the 3-point line in that game. 5 and 8 and nothing but net on each and every single one of them. That's another element when you talk about floor spacing and what you can do creatively in an offense. Seeing what Kristaps Porzingis was able to do on opening night it's so much fun to think about what this offense could become with him inserted into the lineup.
And another layer of why this is so much fun is that this is something brand new for a player who's in just 7 years of his career been through pretty much all of the phases of the NBA, where he's gone from being the number 1 and the go-to scoring option on a team in New York, and obviously developed from there as a rookie. He was an all-star in his 3rd year I think he was a 21-year-old all-star in the league at one point, then goes to Dallas, and he's supposed to be the number 2 that helps bridge Luka Doncic's development. They give up Tim Hardaway Jr. and 2 first-round picks to get him. And then he goes to Washington, and he's kind of back in that traditional number 1 role, but it's a different kind of number 1 than what he was with the Knicks. Instead of the go-to scorer and the facilitator, he's now kind of an off-ball number 1 who's giving them the production that they're looking for. And now he's not just a number 3, he's probably a number 4. Maybe offensively, you could argue he'll bring more to the table than Drew Holiday as the season goes along. I would definitely not go as far as to say he will supplant Jaylen Brown in terms of the go-to focal point of that offense. But at times he will be that guy. And especially if injuries come in, Boston is going to be able to withstand that a good bit more, because I saw like Peyton Pritchard was getting significant minutes in this game. The one guy who like demanded a trade years ago is now like getting minutes in the rotation.
No. It wasn't a trade years ago. It was a trade this past offseason, and instead he got extended. So the NBA finally showing a little bit of backbone. And when a player gets a trade request, it doesn't always mean you trade them right away. I mean, we're seeing it unfold with the James Harden situation a little bit. But
there's a difference between like Damian Lillard. There's a difference between Damian Lillard and Peyton Pritchard. Like Peyton Pritchard was one of those where I was like, the Celtics really don't have to do anything with that one, unless he's such a malcontent that he's going to find himself out of the league. I don't think the Celtics have to worry about that. But look, it worked out. He's now a rotational piece for the Boston Celtics in a world where they just flipped Malcolm Brogdon and Robert Williams in exchange for Drew Holiday. Two players who, by the way, aren't starting on the Portland Trailblazers. The team that's going to finish dead last in the West. Neither player is starting.
Now, Peyton Pritchard, the key, the next time you do have a trade request, you got to go into the James Harden school of quitting. You got to get in that James Harden bag of moves to quit your team, pull out a fat suit, go to a strip club, do whatever you need to do if you need to really get out of town. But hey, it seems like the answer for him, at least right now, is just more minutes on the Celtics team. And I saw plenty of Peyton Pritchard out there. He was a presence on the court in terms of like how they used him. So now that you like look at this team, and the Celtics, many say, have the best starting lineup in the league right now. When you consider Jason, Jaylen, Kristaps, Drew, Derek White in the starting lineup, they're so versatile, but they don't have like a lot of depth. That's the big problem there. So guys like Peyton Pritchard, they are going to have to step up. We're going to see like guys like Luke Cornett play a lot more minutes this season as well. It just, everyone needs to stay healthy. And again, you mentioned a common criticism with Kristaps. Can he stay healthy? Well, if we're having that argument, I mean, we just traded away Robert Williams essentially to get Kristaps into this lineup. Robert Williams, the common question for him, could he stay healthy, right? If Kristaps can play this type of defense, because he had 4 blocks in opening night, if he could play this level of defense, then he's essentially replacing Robert Williams, what he was defensively. And we know he's a much better offensive player than Robert Williams probably will ever develop into. In that sense, it's a huge win. And then, you mentioned Drew Holiday versus Marcus Smart. You saw him lining up against Julius Randle. You saw him lining up against Jalen Brunson. I think Jalen Brunson is like 1 of 6 in the fourth quarter with Drew Holiday guarding him. So that tells you what he brings to this. So they might still be the best defensive team. And Kristaps, even in his post-game presser, talked about how he loves how the Celtics utilize him defensively. He feels like it's been the best defensive fit of his career, which, we talked about this before, how impressive it is that the Celtics continue to be successful regardless of who's coaching, what year, similar group of players, but they're still rotating players in and out. I think they just have a good scheme ultimately that helps them be a quality defensive team on a year in, year out basis. And I think Kristaps has gained that little bit of a boost.
Yeah. And you mentioned their best starting 5 in the league. I mean, Juju, they had probably the best starting 5 in the league last year. And if they weren't number 1, they were number 2 behind Milwaukee. I mean, this team was absolutely phenomenal last year. Number 1 in the league in expected win-loss record. Number 1 in SRS ranking. The only team in the NBA to be top 5 offensive efficiency rating and top 5 in defensive efficiency rating. I mean, this team clearly got better year over year. I know that they were losing that game to the Knicks a little bit, but I mean, we all agree that, I mean, you just talked about it, trading a bona fide all-star in Drew Holiday for Malcolm Brogdon and Robert Williams and draft picks. That is the type of move that you make in order to solidify your 2-star players, to give them a support system that can potentially sustain the success that they've had over the past 2 years. Because I did say last offseason and reiterated right before the season, I think the Celtics' best chance to win a championship has passed them by because of how good they were on the defensive side of the ball in 22 and how they were the best regular season team in the league, hands down, in 23, and the Bucks lost to the Heat and all that stuff. But at the same time, they've clearly helped support their 2-star players. And the thing that does help with the defensive part of it is, despite the fact that you move on from Robert Williams and Marcus Smart, is that they have traded for very good defensive players and prioritized trading for very good defensive players, even as they've moved on from guys who were, I mean, fundamental pieces of the best defensive team in NBA history from January 1st, 2022 to the end of that 2022 season where Steph Curry swiped their soul in the finals.
Well, let's not let JB completely off the hook here, because while I'm not going to overreact and say, Jaylen Brown is trash, by no means. He's still that dude. He still is a fun player to watch. He still will have a day where he just shoots the lights out of the gym. And heck, it might be Friday for all I know when they play their second game. We'll see how this video ages in that regard. But what I would say, when we talk about who is the number 2, who is the number 3, a common criticism between Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum is they're too much similar in skill set. They're too much the same guy. Well, Kristaps is anything but the same guy. He's bigger than everyone on the Celtics roster and adds another dimension in that varies so much between Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum in its own right. So on a day when Jaylen is having a bad game or Jason is having a bad game, because we've seen Jason Tatum have bad games before too, unfortunately, some of them have been in the playoffs, I feel as though Kristaps can add a different element to this offense and defense that will supplement one of those two guys. Now, again, ultimately, it's going to come down to you can't have both of those guys struggling, and then you have to put it all on KP and Drew Holiday. But if you need to, at least it seems like for now, you can do that, which I think is very exciting. And it, again, increases the title prospects for this team and certainly makes them the favorite in the Eastern Conference in my mind. All right, guys. Well, what do you think about the Boston Celtics? Overreactions from game 1. Maybe you're watching this after game 2. Same energy for Kristaps, same energy for Jaylen. How are you feeling about this team? Like to know in the comments below. Leave a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel. Follow us on our social medias. From Choo Choo Cow. Stay safe, happy, and healthy. We'll see you next time.